Welcome to the Counselling Tutor Podcast, the must-listen-to podcast for students of counselling and psychotherapy. Here are your hosts, Rory Lees-Oakes and Ken Kelly.
Hello and welcome to the Counselling Tutor Podcast with me, Rory Lees-Oakes. And with me, as always, is my partner in the existential journey of counselling, Mr. Ken Kelly. How are you, Ken?
I am excellent, Rory. Thank you very much for asking. Glad to be here. Can't help but notice episode 90. Wow, what a journey we've taken on the Counselling Tutor Podcast, with closing in on 500,000, 500,000 downloads of the podcast. So somebody's listening and we're very grateful for that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, listener. There's one listener downloading it 500,000
again and again. I want to see their data bill. Episode 90, what can you expect? Value packed as always. We start off by speaking about joining an ethical body, an important topic, and it's, I guess, timeous in that this is a time of year when a lot of student practitioners may be looking to join an ethical body in a student role. The next topic that we're going to cover, and that is, of course, with Practice Matters with Rory, sex in the therapy room, a really, really interesting topic. And we're going to be closing today's episode with being a reflexive practitioner. Reflexive, not reflective. Interesting differentiation in those words, and we're going to speak a lot about that. But let's start off, as we always do, with a little bit of a debate and a chat about joining an ethical body, Rory.
Yes, it's about this time of year that tutors hand out forms to join ethical bodies. It could be the BACP, or it could be the National Counselling Society, or depending on what modality you're studying, it could be the British Psychoanalytical Council, because there are a number of awarding bodies. And sometimes students do ask, and they ask in our Facebook page, and if you're wondering what our Facebook page is, if you type in Counselling Tutor into Facebook, you'll find two pages. One's our business page, where you can give us a review. So if you like this podcast, please give us a 5-star review. We love those. And also you'll find our community group, which is a closed group. You just knock on the door, ask to join. You'll join 19,000 other like-minded people studying the world of counselling and psychotherapy. Very, very vibrant group. And one of the things that's come up in that Facebook page is students asking, why do we have to join an ethical body? And the reason for it is it links strongly to two aspects. Excuse me. One is employability. If you're going to a college or a university, one of the things that they really have to do is to make sure that when they teach you, you become employable. It's no good coming to the end of your course to find out that you can't get a job, or it's harder to get a job. More and more employers now are asking for people to be members of ethical bodies as part of the specification, the job specification. And it's a lot easier to join at student level, work your way through, and then when you qualify, then you can go on to get full membership, and that really does support you in getting a job. And also, I think, from my point of view, being part of an ethical body, it shows a commitment to the profession, your commitment to the profession, that you're taking your work seriously. Because when you join an ethical body, you have to stick by the ethics that the ethical body produce, which is good for the clients. Certainly on my website, I've got a little circle with a big tick in it that says that I'm registered with the BACP, and I have a registration number. And, more and more clients look for that quality seal now. It's the same with the NCS. The NCS, National Counselling Society, have their own quality seal. But it is strongly linked to employability and commitment, I think, Ken.
100%. And the thing about a ethical body is that you can't just get in. There is a barrier. Somebody without the proper qualifications can't go along and simply just pay a membership fee to join. It's not a club. It really is an ethical body, and they will have a set of criteria that you need to match to be able to gain entry. So you'll notice that when you start studying, you'll get to a certain place within your formal studies where your tutor will say you are now eligible. And you will have a fitness of practice letter. There will be a motivation from your tutor for you to join, to say that you have been a person of good standing, I guess, within what it is that you do. Now, at the moment, as we make this recording, counselling is not regulated in the United Kingdom. However, it is regarded as a profession. And profession comes from the word profess. And it was professing an oath, I do believe, Rory. I know you have a little bit of knowledge on this. And that's what you do when you join your ethical body. You are professing an oath. You are signing up to a certain set of boundaries and ethics that you will abide to work by. And that guarantees, well, it doesn't guarantee anything, I guess, but it kind of helps to ensure best practice. It helps the clients that if they feel let down, that they have a complaints procedure, that they can say something about it. And the sharp end, or the sharp end of the pointy stick, is if you do break the rules and there is a complaint, you can have that membership revoked.
Yes, absolutely. It's called a sanction. And if a complaint's upheld against you, then it can be anything from having to do some work in supervision or writing a reflective piece, right up to being struck off. They have struck off people before now. It has to be pretty serious before you get struck off. And of course, the different ethical bodies in different parts of the world. Our friends in Scotland, that's COSCA. They have their own ethical body, and certainly in the Republic of Ireland have their own ethical body. And there's different ethical bodies. I think Ken might have a list of the different ethical bodies, but there's different ethical bodies for different modalities. I've alluded to the British Psychoanalytical Council. People who practice solely CBT have their own ethical body. There's really a lot of them. I guess the BACP is the most well known because they tend to have a very vibrant marketing department, and I think, if I stand to be corrected, I think they've been going the longest. They were founded in the 70s. So yeah, the reason you join an ethical body is effectively to help employability. And if you look at any of the job specifications, if you're nearing graduation and you're having a look, you will find that they want membership of an ethical body. And in fact, it's not just counsellors. If you're in any industry, any healthcare industry, most job posts will ask you to be a member of, the Royal College of Surgeons if you're a surgeon or something like that, or the British Medical Council if you're a doctor, or the Association of Midwives. I'm not sure it's called the Association of Midwives. British Midwifery Council, I think it's called, if you're a midwife. And some of those are statutory. I think if you're a midwife, you have to join. I think you have to join. So, there is a precedent set for that, and that's. I think it's useful. I think it's useful because it shows commitment.
Definitely, and it is a two-way relationship. Being a member of an ethical body, they will produce the documentation for the ethical framework to which you will commit to work within the boundaries of that ethical framework. But they should also have a department, an ethics department, that if you should have a question, an ethical dilemma, that you can phone and you can have a chat. And from time to time, they may give you advice or point you to additional reading material. And I know certainly the BACP have a monthly a periodical, a magazine that goes out that has interesting articles in. They provide links to continuing professional development, or CPD, which is one of the requirements of the ethical framework, is that you will continue to study and learn and not become stale, keep up with what is working at the moment. It's like that commitment that you make when you join your ethical body and you sign up to that ethical framework. So you should be serviced by your ethical body, as well as paying them their fees. You get something for that as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And in terms of BACP, you can contact them. They have an ethics department. They have a very vibrant research department, which I spoke about on the last podcast, on podcast 89. And also they run conferences so that you can have networking events. You can go, you can speak about what's pressing or what you're observing in your practice, which is really important. And one other thing, there's a lot of conversation about when do you join. Usually people join in the first year of their practice-based course. So that could be when they're doing a level 4 course, and they're on a level 4 course, or a level 5 course, which has a practice element to it, where you're working in a placement. Or if you're on a degree, maybe the second year of your degree, where you're going out to work with clients. So if you're doing a master's degree, the same thing. So it's you usually join at the time where you're actually going out to work as a counsellor, albeit at a student level.
100%. And speaking of supporting you through your study journey at the master's level and further, help with research, you can also look to the ethical body. They publish a lot of information from time to time. I know the BACP do research and then publish the findings of that. So kind of it keeps your finger on the pulse of what is going on. And you may be listening to this, and I think, Rory, you made such an important point where you say it's about employability as well, that an employer would expect that you take your profession seriously and that you are affiliated with an ethical body and working within an ethical framework. But even if you look to go into private practice, you may say, well, do I really need an ethical body if I go into private practice? Well, what I might suggest is you try and get practice insurance without being a member of an ethical body. It's one of the first questions that is asked on the insurance questionnaire, and you may find that you struggle because you're not showing that you align yourself to an ethical framework that you work towards.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have to say, not all insurance companies put that onus on to people to be a member of an ethical body. Some don't. But what it also does, and really it's my final word on it, it gives clients the confidence that if anything goes wrong, they can raise a complaint. And I think there's a real difference between raise the complaint to an organisation and raise the complaint to an ethical body. And here, for me, is the big difference. The big difference is that an ethical body is fully equipped to take a view of what the complaint is and how it impacts on that particular discipline of counselling, where an organisation may not have the kind of breadth of knowledge to be able to do that. So in my experience, if a complaint's raised, it's usually passed on to the ethical body, and then the ethical body makes a decision. And then what can usually happen is then that is then fed back to the employer, and the employer takes a view on what the ethical body said. So there's, it's almost like connecting the dots for the circle. Super important. And, I think I pay £170 a year to be a member. And, sometimes I do grumble a bit, but it does give clients who we are in service of the confidence that they're working with someone who's taking care in their practice. And I want to be very careful about this, because there are people who take a principled view. They don't want to join an ethical body, and it doesn't mean they're any less principled or ethical. But I think from the general public's point of view, they're more and more looking for some kind of quality seal.
100%. So, Rory, you mentioned that I have a list. I do indeed have a list of a number of ethical bodies. It's not all of them. And what we will do is we'll pop that into the show notes of this episode. So if you want to have a look at that with links to all of the ethical bodies in that list, you can go to counsellingtutor.com, because that's our website. That's where you want to be hanging out. While you're at counsellingtutor.com, join our mailing list, because then you'll get all our updates. We always send out when we have a new podcast as well, and let you know what the topic is of that. So go to counsellingtutor.com, click on the podcast tab. It's in the top main menu. Navigate your way down to episode 90, that's 90, and on the show notes page, all the links that we discuss in today's episode, and including that list of a number of ethical bodies. But that kind of brings us to the end of that little subject, and we're moving on to something that when we speak about ethics, that kind of links together. I see what you do when you plan these topics, Rory. We're speaking about sex in the therapy room. What can we expect from this in Practice Matters today?
Well, first of all, Ken, we're talking about figuratively, not literally, I have to say.
I didn't even think of
And in case anybody thinks it's an advert rather than an overview.
Yes.
Yes, and what I would say is if you've got little ears listening, it will contain themes of an adult nature. But yes, we work with clients' full experience of their lives, and that includes their sexual identities. And I'm going to be overviewing and talking a little bit about how you work with very intimate issues that clients bring up, and also about how that might impact on self. Really, really important. I may even mention, Ken, the T word, the transference word. I may even mention it.
Looking forward to that. Let's jump straight into Practice Matters after this very short message.
Take the stress out of your counselling studies and get the support of Rory and I by joining us in the Counselling Study Resource. See how Counselling Study Resource can help you. Visit counsellingtutor.com. That's counsellingtutor.com.
Before I continue, this section contains themes of an adult nature, so listener discretion is advised. It can be hard to hear stories or situations that make us feel uncomfortable or even embarrassed. As therapists, we engage in personal development, our own therapy and supervision in a quest to shed light into the darkest areas of our own psyche, and that includes sex. A few years ago, I had lunch with a female colleague who was quite distressed at her own reaction to hearing the intimate details of a female client's sex life. It turned out that she'd felt slightly aroused, which she confided had made her feel like a voyeur and not a therapist. She was astute enough to realise she was experiencing erotic countertransference, feelings generated by the sexual nature of a client's narratives, and she'd booked an early supervision to work this through. I did ask her if experiencing pleasure vicariously may be a reaction to something missing in her own life. She'd been single for a while. She laughed and said probably. One of the difficulties that students face is that some course modules do not touch on sex at all, yet it comes up, no pun intended, so much in the therapy room. So here's my challenge. If you can find time in your PD group, have a go at answering these questions collectively. What messages did you receive in childhood about sex? How comfortable are you with sex and its wide variations? What aspects of sex would you feel uncomfortable talking about to a friend? And finally, consider which adult sexual practices you would find repulsive. The answers may define the limits of your ability to work relationally with a client should they discuss an area of sexual practice that touches on the questions above and, more crucially, the answers to those questions. By understanding your own process in relation to sex, you'll gain the ability to be aware and manage your own countertransference, which could be a vehicle for judgment. As part of that process, I encourage therapists to explore their own sexuality and perhaps past traumas, which may make it difficult to have a frank conversation about sex. Exploring this in your own therapy may be beneficial, promoting self-love and confidence when working with the intimate details of your client's life. As the old adage says, the client can only go as far as a therapist can go themselves.
Thank you, as always, Rory. That is such an important topic, and I'm so glad that you covered it. And it just reminds me that the client can only go as far as the counsellor goes. And I remember you saying that when I heard it for the first time. You were saying it, Rory. It was when I was being lectured by you as a student, but it stuck with me. It's about us being able to go into areas and disregard our own feelings of maybe embarrassment or shame and recognize that as issues of self and be able to go where the client goes. And it is such a part of humanity. It is a huge part of humanity, sexuality, and it is brought into the therapy room again and again. Super duper handout. If you want to get Rory's super duper handout from Practice Matters today, that's really simple to get. You go to counsellingtutor.com, click on the podcast tab, go to episode 90. That's 90. It's right there on the page. You can just click on it and put in your email address, and we will send you Rory's super duper handout, and it is free. However, if you are a member of the Counselling Study Resource, which is our paid for section where we provide additional support, continuing professional development, and guidance for students of counselling psychotherapy, and I might say qualified therapists and supervisors as well. We've got a lot of different members in there. Well, that has already been added to your handouts vault, so you can just log in and it is there. But now moving on, and we're moving on to being a reflexive, and that's got an X in it, so not reflective, a reflexive practitioner. Tell us more, Rory.
Yes, it's really interesting. Through the years that I've been in training as a student, and also I've trained therapists, we always talk about reflective practitioners, don't we? In fact, assignments have, demonstrate reflection in your practice. And more recently, there's a new idea, or an emerging idea within the world of counselling and psychotherapy called reflexivity. And reflexivity is actually acting on our reflections. So it's all very well and good as sitting and pondering and reflecting, but actually, how do we then action those reflections that have come to our awareness? What do we do, and how do we do it? And I think as practitioners, there's a number of avenues that we use for that. And one of those is supervision. When I'm going to see my supervisor, I will often say, well, this is what I've thought about, but actually, if I worked in this way, or if I worked in that way, and it's a consultation. It's about taking what you've learned and what you've reflected on and putting it into an action. Because, you could have all the greatest ideas in the world, but if you don't do anything with them, that's all they are. They're ideas.
Yeah, I hear you 100%. So reflective is thinking about, going over, revisiting, looking and seeing how it really looks. Reflexive is taking an action or considering an action, speaking to somebody about that. What are you going to do about it? So a big difference there, Rory.
Yes, as I mentioned in the practice matters section, when I indeed did say, the client can only go as far as you're willing to go yourself. Part of that may be that process of, that feels a bit uncomfortable, and I can't really go there with the client. And if that's the case, reflexivity would be taking it to supervision, and if it's not resolved in supervision, taking it to your own therapy. And that's super important, because if you're working with a client and there's a place that you can't physically go, because let's remember that when we're counselling clients and working with them, we're accompanying them on their journey. We're like a companion who walks along the road with them, walks up the hills and climbs the mountains and crosses the fords, and we're walking with them. They're slightly in front of us, but we're walking with them, and we're sharing what their view of the world is. But if we come to a place where we cannot go with them, it's very possible they can't get there themselves. And being reflexive means thinking and being really honest, I think, about, what is the resistance in me? And thinking about, is that about knowledge? I don't know enough about what the client's talking about, so that could be CPD, continual professional development. It could be about thinking about your own counter-transference. Why am I having such resistance? What is being generated? Or it could be something of a parallel process. In other words, something that's going on for you and the client at the same time, maybe a divorce, let's say. And how are you going to process that for yourself? And all those things that I've talked about are reflexive. They're action-based activities.
I like it. So that I can clarify my understanding, because I'll be honest, I went into this topic not fully understanding it, Rory. I understand reflective. So reflective, I've got to say, because they sound similar, don't they? Reflexive, reflective. Reflective would be, you're in the session with the client. We'll keep it on that sexuality note, keeping with the theme of today's podcast. They may mention something you notice within self as the counsellor. When they say that, I feel a cringe. I feel is that embarrassment? Is that shame? What is that's coming up for me? That is reflective. You're looking at self. You might go outside of that and have a think about it. What actually came up in me? You are reflecting on what happened. But reflexive is then saying, right, what am I going to do? Like you say, Rory, is there some CPD I need to take? Do I need to go into my own therapy? I definitely need to take it into my supervisor. Am I understanding it correctly?
You're absolutely right. And it's one part of it. There's reflexivity is a sociological idea. So we join this from our friends in the world of sociology. But actually, in terms of this podcast section, it really is about what we do and how we do it. It's about taking action. And I think a good example of that is reflection, reflexivity, and action. And it's a continuing cycle. You know, as therapists, we should be on a continuing cycle of thinking about, this has happened. What can I do? And then we go and do some action. And in fact, you know, for those of us who are lecturers and teachers and have teaching qualifications, and both Ken and myself we can remember as far back to our training, Ken, Kolb's learning cycle.
Yes.
Yeah, where you do something, then you reflect on it, and then you take action. It's the same thing. And really, it's being drawn into the world of therapy because we need to, as therapists, to be able to harness find out what we don't know, if that makes sense. It's not just a case, we're not philosophers pondering and sitting on a stone and stroking our beards and reflecting on the world. I do it all the time. I've got a lovely stone near the reservoir I live. I can sit on it and ponder the world and look at the sky. But actually, that's great, isn't it? But actually, it's about when we've pondered and we've reflected, what we're going to do about it.
Yes. Putting the steps in place, doing something about it, taking action. I remember years and years ago, there was in my class at school, there was a poster of cats, and there were 3 cats, and there were like little sayings underneath it, and it said, some people make things happen, some people wonder what happened, and what was the other one? I can't even remember the other one now.
I remember it.
What is it, Roy?
I remember it. There are 3 sorts of people in the world.
Yes.
Those who wonder what happens.
Yes.
Those who watch what happens.
Yes.
Those who wonder what's happening.
Got it. So reflection is watching what happened.
Yes.
And reflection
Reflexivity.
is making it happen. I've got it now, you see.
Yeah,
I'm good.
yeah.
You see, this is what Counselling Tutor is about. And I view myself definitely as a lifelong student to counselling psychotherapy. This has been episode 90. Notice I keep on saying the numbers there because 90 sounds like 19 in my head. It's episode 90, Counselling Tutor Podcast. We started today speaking about joining an ethical body, what that entails. And of course, you can get a list of those ethical bodies from the show notes, counsellingtutor.com. Click on podcast, go to episode 90. Practice Matters, we spoke about sex in the therapy room, and ending off with being a reflexive practitioner. What an episode.
Fantastic. It's a great journey. And as always, stay grounded and stay safe.
Take the stress out of your counselling studies and get the support of Rory and I by joining us in the Counselling Study Resource. Counselling Study Resource, or CSR for short, is the world's most comprehensive assignment guidance and study support resource for students just like you of counselling and psychotherapy. See how Counselling Study Resource can help you. Visit counsellingtutor.com. That's counsellingtutor.com.
Thank you for listening to the Counselling Tutor Podcast. Find the show notes for this episode on our website at www.counsellingtutor.com.